Today's episode is about this motherfucker. Fellow rebels, here in the dungeon with me today is a rebel who is as OG as it gets. If haddock and tree were the sparks that lit the fires of rebellion, then this scout, and his subsequent stab in the chest, was the gasoline. He pioneered both BotGD death scenes and ships. He has been lost and found time and time again. People of the Grounded Dungeon, I give you Vox.
How's it going, everybody? How's everyone doing?
I'm sure they'd say great if they could hear you. So, Vox, thank you for joining me here in my cell. So this is the podcast where I take everyone through basically the same questions as I do with everyone, and then think of some unique questions, but mostly just let everything rabbit trail as we just chat about BotGD as we've been doing for the past half-decade with no interest in quitting.
Boy, you gotta put it that way when you say half-decade. Just remind us how long this has been going on.
It has been that long, and I love that.
Almost 6 years. That's insane to me.
Mm-hmm. All the great moments where we were sitting there going, well, this just started. I wonder how long we'll be friends. Probably a few weeks, and now we're here. 2020.
Yeah, I can't say I didn't try, but at least something good came out of it.
Oh, a lot of good came out of it, and ironically, it's like, stuff happened in the first RP, and then Greg put together this Discord chat, and that's when everyone really began... I mean, I know that there are people like Kane and Cass that I talked with more frequently than others. I didn't talk to you at all. But then... which was silly, considering everything that happened in the story, but we're not getting into that yet. But when BotGD kicked back up, that's when I actually started to have more regular communication with you and Aki and Gray and everyone, and it was pretty cool.
Absolutely.
So, I usually start off with the question of, give us a recap from your perspective of how everything started for you and your BotGD discovery story.
Oh, boy. So it was, almost 6 years ago. I was semi-active within the How to Train Your Dragon community on Tumblr.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of being a part of that fandom, I kind of knew a few people here and there, but essentially I kind of ran my own blog. I did my own thing. I had a handful of people that I followed, and that was about it. I kind of isolated myself in my own little corner. And the next thing I know, I get an ask. And it's just saying, hey, I'm planning to do this thing. Do you want to be a part of it? And I'm like, I'm not doing anything. It's like 2014. At that point, I'm, 21. So I'm like, yeah, that could be fun. And as everyone thinks, let's do this cool little Grounded Dungeon Rebellion, which has been this ongoing inside joke within the fandom for who knows how long, because everyone's making dead dad jokes about Stoic. Also, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie by now, that's your fault.
I was going to say, everything's off the table at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. Because I remember, I think I was one of the first people to be put in the dungeon.
Of course you were.
Which for me is definitely par for the course.
Yeah,
and
just a bit.
So I think I remember like there was this list going around, this post of who was in the dungeon, and it had like superimposed profile pictures all over it. And that was kind of like the let's pick names from here and send them asks. And I know King was like sending out messages left and right. And so we all we didn't even really collaborate on it. It was just like, hey, we're doing this at this time. And I hope to see you there. And the way that it worked was just so phenomenal. And I barely remember that first day. It was all just chaos, but I loved it.
It was just a fever dream right from the get-go.
Absolutely.
And I think I have that picture of imposed images, because didn't they do another one later where everyone had broken out of the dungeon? I put it up. I put it up on the site on the History of Battle of the Grounded Dungeon tab, because I think it was the oldest piece of artwork that we had.
100%. I think you're right.
Yeah, I think that's the very first one. It's one of those great pictures where you have to squint at it just to try to figure out what the hell is going on inside of it.
Yep. That's yep. That was about how everything was back then. You had to squint and try to understand anything that was going on.
Yeah, down to the words, because everyone was typing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I don't think I've ever made as many spelling errors in my life for anything than I did with Battle of the Grounded Dungeon.
Yeah, and when you mention it in hindsight, with how many people were involved with the initial, with like day one, BotGD,
Yeah.
maybe it wasn't the best idea that we did it on Tumblr.
No! No! It's a bad idea that we're doing it on Tumblr now!
I agree, but really we don't have any. Back then, though, especially, because there were so many splintered threads. That's why there's so little that we have in terms of things we can pull from those days, because it's almost like if you were to go to Pompeii and try to... It's like you can find scraps and certain things that happen, but the fucking eruption destroyed 99% of everything.
That is very true. And I tell you what, Tree has done an absolute banger of a job putting season 1 back together. Just by like she has dug up some of the oldest single sentence asks and like gotten them into the fan fiction and all that stuff. But you're right, Pompeii is an excellent description for season 1, because I am sure that like I think season 1 is about 200 pages long or so. And
oh boy.
I have no doubt that there are so many people, like you said, given that list of how many started, that we're missing something. But hopefully, well, there's a consolation that the vast majority, though, I believe we have well retained. And hopefully,
oh, absolutely.
If people who were involved see BotGD posts or the video or the website and stuff, they'll be like, hey, did this part get included? And we'll get some new and cool material, kind of like digging up an artifact, which would be fun.
I think that's the best part about it, is with how expansive the universe became and how out of control it ran from our hands, there's always going to be something that pops up where, like, that happened. And that's always, like, the coolest feeling of nobody remembers it was a thing, and it's almost like we're watching it take its own form, and it has its own life that we could never have given it.
And it constantly places Battle of the Grounded Dungeon in the hands of anyone who wants to be there.
Oh, truth.
Does that mean that anyone who wants to be in the Discord chat will be there? No, because so many poor chat sites were viciously murdered by trolls.
Rest in peace, HipChat.
Oh my god, HipChat. Press F for HipChat. Yeah, we had no choice but to have our own little conclave in the Discord, but that does not prevent any activity at all from Tumblr from anyone who is interested in, being an active member. And as soon as we know they're not a troll, we can get them onto the Discord. It's great.
There you go.
But we had to stop letting our chat rooms die.
Oh my gosh, you're telling me.
I'm having flashbacks.
Because I think like a lot of this started in regards to just chatting about the RP, because a lot of it in its original incantation, like day one BotGD, was everything was done in asks. Everything was done on Tumblr. Nothing was done outside of it because we never organized prior to that. The first time that anyone really gathered anywhere was when Aki was doing art in her live stream. I think it was like Picardo or something she was using, and we all jumped on her stream. And that was the first BotGD chat. Was in Aki's art stream, of all places.
The more I think about it, the more I realize how little we knew what we were doing. Because A, we wouldn't even ask if someone wanted to do a thread back then. We would just send an ask in general, starting a conversation out of the blue.
Yeah.
Second, it was on Tumblr. Shame on us. Third, our first attempt at a group chat, we were like, well, we all happened to get on Aki's stream. This is great. We should do something where we can all talk together, and we decided Hip Chat.
Honestly, in hindsight, Hip Chat was not that bad.
No, it's just that I have never had to access a chat room by saving the web link to my desktop in a text file.
Fair point.
Especially when stuff like Skype, which I clicked on an app on my taskbar, existed, and we didn't think of that until like a year later.
Yeah, no, it was like 2015 when we finally actually did a Skype call together. That was crazy.
I don't know how much of that was, oh, well, let's make sure we don't get too connected with these strangers from the internet, and how much of it was just this real aggressive stance that our subconscious had to be as difficult on us as possible.
I think it's a beautiful mixture of both. And I also think a lot of it was, I think for many of us, myself included, and I've massively shifted for a multitude of reasons, a big one being this RP, was I've always had kind of a social awkwardness. Mm-hmm. And being able to do what I've done over the last 10 years between music and public speaking, either through my work or just through personal stuff, streaming on Twitch, or even just doing this sort of thing, I've gone from I couldn't stand to talk to somebody for more than 2 minutes on the internet, like verbally or through video or anything like that, mm-hmm. to now look at us, we're doing a damn podcast.
Yeah, we're going to be here for about 45 minutes, so strap in
for it. Yeah, no, it's just weird. I think a lot of it was we didn't do it because a lot of us didn't feel comfortable doing it. And I think the more we learned about each other, and the closer we got, and now it just feels like family. But it definitely wasn't like that at first.
Big time. I think I remember when I jumped on a Skype call for the first time, and I remember seeing people's faces who decided to share. And my first thought was, wow, these are people. These are the people I've been hanging out with. And then I had a moment where I was chatting with King and just be like, hey, we're talking about a lot and the text blocks are getting huge. Do you want to do a Skype call? And as soon as that Skype call happened, it immediately shifted again to, oh, this is actually a friend, because I've been talking to them for a while now, and now we're talking on Skype. And that was like, that moment where it was like, okay, these people are slowly fading out of just a name on Tumblr to someone that I know. And it still feels weird, because I'm still like, oh, that's that person I know from the internet. And then I remind myself that I have known this person from the internet, quote unquote, for 6 gosh darn years.
Oh my god, 6 years.
And
every time it's said, it just kind of sends a chill down my spine.
It makes me question whether or not something's wrong with me some days. And there is. But I'm all for it. I'm all for it. This RP has definitely been one of the things that's given me the greatest amount of joy and expansion in my imagination and even social life. So,
oh, absolutely. I feel the exact same way.
And that goes into a question that happens later on, but we've already covered topics. I normally ask people what was the biggest learning experience from Battleground to Dungeon, and you've already brought up aspects of how it just opened your socializing capabilities wide open, and I think that's pretty great.
Yeah, I would say that's a big one for me. The social aspect is huge, and in terms of anything else that I've learned, I think I thought I was a really good creative writer before BotGD, and now I absolutely don't think that anymore.
Oh no, that's not the wholesome content we want.
I don't think I'm bad, but I think it was a great reality check, because when you grow up somewhere I did, like Montana, where there's not a big artistic scene there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not an emphasis put on the creative arts. You kind of, if you are halfway decent at it, you almost feel like a rare breed.
Okay.
So this was my first time kind of being thrown into, a gauntlet where there's dozens of people who are infinitely better than I am at this stuff. And at first it was super intimidating, but now I just think it's so inspirational, and I learned so much. Like, I learned words through this RP that looked like French to me when I first started doing this stuff, and now I've really expanded on how I use my vocabulary, and especially how I write now creatively. Like, I didn't do a lot of story writing before, and now I just get a lot of inspiration from it.
And I would argue, like, another side where you're probably having more success with your creative writing just because you've simply written so much more by going through this.
I don't even want to know how much I've written, like, in terms of word count. Like, honestly, that's something I've thought about a lot. I would love to find out how many words I've written in this RP, but I also don't want to see anything close to a novel.
I mean, oh, damn, dude, it probably is. Everyone wrote so much, and I have the documents. I could word search. I'm not going to, because I have to organize so much crap for all this stuff. But anyway, I could word search your character name, and as long as I can go through the document and skip past all the parts where someone's just talking about you, and get to the parts where it's you typing, yeah, there's probably going to be a lot of pages there, man.
Oh, boy.
There's a lot going around with this.
Yeah.
But I totally feel you with... Because I had done some creative writing beforehand, but it was that very awkward early teenager sort of thing, which I can only imagine what that's going to be like if I ever reread that, because I could hardly survive my awkward late teen, almost 20-year-old creative writing.
I feel that.
Yeah. Oh, man. Never ending, but I guess it's like old art. Shows where you come from. At least I try to tell myself that anyway. But to this day, I will read sections written by other people from even way back then and go, holy shit, they really knew what they were doing. They didn't. That's a lie. But my brain said, they've got to know what they're doing, because this is incredible.
Yeah, then you look at shit like I did on day one, and it was garbage. A lot of the posts I made, because none of us, absolutely not a single one of us, would have said, oh yeah, we're going to be doing this in 6 years. Like, hell
no.
Absolutely not. So a lot of us, and by a lot of us, I mean mostly me, took it not serious in the slightest. So I'm making, like, joke posts every other post. Like, I'll do a halfway serious one, and then I do, like, a gurgle, gurgle, gurgle dying noises post, because I feel like this is funny, and people will laugh.
Yeah.
And then I'll finally be out of this damn RP, and then I'll move on with my life. And that absolutely didn't happen. And then you've also got people in between my funny posts, like, writing Shakespeare. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to tone it down a little bit.
I have to tell you, though, the people who don't take this seriously are a goddamn blessing. For real. The reason this RP is so good is because it's dark and gritty and serious, and some of the most fucked up stuff on the face of the planet happens in this RP. And yet, there is so much silly shit. It is endlessly hysterical and entertaining, and it would be edgy and grimdark if it didn't have those moments.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a little sidebar to it, but the way that I write someone like Dario is I write him very ironically human, and I try not to put too much... I wrote him and Vox very different ways. Later on, after my whole shitscapade that I had in, like, season 1, when I started to take it seriously, I wrote Vox with a lot of really proper cadence, a lot of professionalism, and really traditional linguistics that you would expect for that era. And then with Dario, I'm just like, he literally says, like, dude, and cracks jokes, and it's just because that's how I see him as a character, as someone who doesn't understand the life that everyone else has had to live. So he doesn't have, that backstory to fall back on, or that upbringing. He's very, very much a lot grittier in that respect, and not as proper. So I thought it was interesting that I was able to write very eloquently with one character, and then really just channel myself into the second one, which has been fun.
And that's big. Everyone, usually it's around their second muse or so, that or at least the second or third season with the same muse, that they really begin to solidify not only the character as an independent character, but channeling themselves through that character as well. And it's very cool and exciting to see people do that, because it shows you two different sides of the people that you're having a good time with.
Absolutely.
Which I always enjoyed looking at. And yeah, I get that the speech patterns, it's interesting you bring that up, because I'd have this thing where Stonegate and Haddock would be talking, and you had this king who was like educated to the highest degree from one region of the continent, to this shipyard kid from a different part of the continent with nothing even close to a proper education. And there were moments where we were sitting there going, why are these two unable to communicate? And then we stopped and we're like, they probably can hardly understand each other some days.
Yeah. And I think it was so cool to watch that from an outsider perspective, and I think anyone can attest to this. And I think that's why it was such a very, very, very popular dynamic when it was happening, was you two wrote it as exactly how it should have happened and how it would have happened.
Yes.
And I think that spoke volumes to kind of being able to transcend just reading the words on the screen and being able to imagine it, because it felt so lifelike at that point.
The authenticity behind it was just, I could never replicate it again. Even though there are moments where I go back and reread parts and go, oh my god, what is this fucking kid saying? What is he doing? It was just great, the moment where we were looking at like some of their biggest conflicts and going, there's no way they're miscommunicating that badly just by word for word issues. And that's where it started kind of as a headcanon that made sense, and then got implemented later on in the story, where there were moments where both of them had like huge long rants back and forth to each other, and it went completely over. Like, they were both mad, so it didn't matter. They were just yelling at each other for what they were personally mad about, but they could scarcely understand what the other person was saying between dialect. And for Stonegate, it was... For Haddock, it was the slang Stonegate was using, and for Stonegate, it was the big words Haddock was using. And it was just... I loved it.
And then there was me, who, like, both of those things kind of fucked me up, and I didn't understand either. So I'm just like, this is great.
Just sit back, eat the popcorn, and enjoy the show. Oh yeah,
because the emotion easily came across, even without, even if I don't understand a lot of the stuff that was said, the key pieces are there, and the emotion is transcribed exactly how it should have been for you to be able to go into it. It was accessible, I guess I would say, for many people who maybe didn't have the opportunity to know most of what things meant, but it's still easy to kind of get a grasp on.
Yeah, and it was really neat. So, we went through like so many of the interview questions without actually separating the questions, just because we were talking. Because the next one was, what was your reaction to BotGD becoming as big as it has? And we already touched on that just by saying the ever-dreadful phrase, 6 years.
Well, I can, to add on to that, nobody, and I'll repeat it again, nobody would have expected it. Absolutely nobody could have guessed that would have happened.
None.
And as big as it got, I don't think, especially any of us could have expected that it would essentially consume a majority of our life for a long time. myself especially, because I had nothing else. And so once it became that we were doing this every single night, and I would stay up until, just like last night, 5 hours before I had to be up for work.
Oh,
just
boy.
because I wanted to get these threads done. And it's amazing how much of my life was and still is being impacted by all of this, because the things that it's brought into my life haven't gone away.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got people like Austin and Brenna that are now together because of this whole thing, and all because I told Austin about this whole weird RP I was doing in a Denny's at like midnight. like the fact that that's even a thing is just...
Oh my God.
I don't believe it when I say it, but the fact that my entire friend base because of that has grown so exponentially, it's just so dope.
Yeah. Just for the record, since I lean into the microphone for this one, we have confirmed that someone named Tree is going to marry someone named Tez because someone named Vox, all from an online Tumblr roleplay based on How to Train Your Dragon, told him about it at a Denny's at midnight.
Yeah, that's exactly, there's not even any sort of hyperbole to it. That's exactly how it happened.
End quote. That happened.
Yeah. I'm so glad it did.
We are bleeding out of the internet and into the world.
I didn't even think he was going to like it. Straight up when I was telling him about it, I don't even remember, A, why we went to Denny's, B, why I brought it up, or C, why I talked so much about it at that point. Because, well, I guess, obviously, when I say it was the biggest part of my life, it's all I did. So I'm like, oh, man, I think... And I knew Austin was very much like me, the creative type, and when I speak of Montana, there's not many of us.
Right.
So I guess
gotta share what you have.
Exactly. You have to say, I'm part of this cool thing. Maybe you might appreciate... And when I told him about it, there was no expectation that I wanted him to join it. It was just, hey, you might find this interesting. And then next thing he didn't even tell me he was joining. He just did.
Oh, God bless him.
I think that's the best part. All of a sudden I see this character named Tez, and fun fact, I didn't know that was Austin.
Oh my God.
And then when I found out, I'm like, oh, that's hilarious. My in real life friend is one of these characters in this story now.
Austin gets super BOTGD points just for deciding to do it that way.
Oh, absolutely.
Hats off. Good for you, man.
It's so weird.
Oh, man. And it's the other big bleed out that I noticed, of course it has something to do with Tree, from internet to, well, it's still on the internet, but getting towards other people, is the sheer number of views that video got, and then the people that were asking questions. Have you ever bothered to read the comments on her video? It's hysterical.
So I check the Ready As I'll Ever Be video once a month.
Oh my gosh.
Because it's the same reaction for me. I don't believe the traction that it's gotten because of how many people are going into the comment section saying, I want to know more about this. Right. And it's almost like, is this what it's like to be famous? It's for a lot of us, the closest we'll ever get to it. So it's humbling.
Yes. Oh my God. When I saw Stone get as the opening moment in that video, I just about fell out of my chair.
Yeah, that's cool for you. I wasn't even in it. I wasn't even in that season, to be fair, so it's my fault entirely, but...
Right. Well, and it was the curiosity that a lot of people were putting forward. The authentic curiosity, not the silly stuff where they didn't read the dang description. That really made me go, we need a fan site so that people can read summaries and see who the characters are and decide whether or not they want to join in on this and hop on the bandwagon and just same opportunity we had, since they're already curious. So that's what inspired that. I mean, I know it's technically up, but my God, it's a garbage heap right now. But I really, really, really want to see if Tree will link it to the video one day. So I guess we'll have to talk about that one and find out.
Definitely.
So, just to kind of clear this question slot, is what inspired your character and what eventually motivated them? Because you've talked about the dynamic difference between Vox and Dario, but where did each of them come from, so to speak?
That's a tough question. Mostly because of Vox. Dario, I think, is a little easier for me to kind of explain where it came from. But Vox, I think I have a hard time remembering most of it. But that being said, I had already used the name Lost Vox, obviously. Mm-hmm. That was my handle, which I don't even think that handle exists anymore. I think I already changed my name on there. So,
well, there goes a legend right there.
I don't know. In fact, while I'm talking, I'm going to look it up. But I had the handle lostvox.tumblr.com. No, it's still here.
Oh, huzzah.
So I used the name Vox just because that's what everyone already called me.
Right.
Because it's the easy way to shorten my username. And in regards to him being just a scout, the main reason I chose kind of that class to put him in was I wanted him to have a role, but I didn't want it to be involved. Because the first few weeks I was in this RP, my main goal was to get out of it.
You failed!
I did. I failed. Literally, I could not have done a worse job. Because literally, after day one, my goal after the first night, when everyone was kind of stepping back from the shock and awe and kind of just wiping their brow and trying to come to terms with what just happened, one of my first thoughts was, that was fun, but I don't want to do this anymore. And so I'm just spending all my time trying to write Vox out of the story. And that's kind of his initial, the way he was written, was I'm kind of trying to set everything up for him to die.
Right.
Which he did.
He did.
But obviously, eventually, after myself and a certain other person who won't be named decided that was going to happen, same said person and I decided, you know what would be cool? What if they liked each other? And what if they kissed?
Oh my god.
And because that was kind of, once I died, I dug my, no pun intended, by putting myself in purgatory. And that was kind of supposed to be my fail-safe. Of, like, if anyone needs my character, he's technically not dead. But then things kind of went south, and all of a sudden the purgatory actually made sense for the storyline, and I'm like, shit. So I kept writing, and then once the whole Lost Pelt ship kind of started to take its own reins, that became Vox's motivation.
Okay.
It went from my initial wanting to do it to get out of it to I want to keep doing this because I really like this relationship that we've built.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like what I held on to try to keep going with it.
And so what about Dario?
So the big thing I wanted for Vox is everyone was developing backstories for their characters, and everybody had a backstory. Every character had a backstory except for Vox. Nobody knew anything about him other than what had already happened in the storyline. Like, how he got to where he wasn't explained. The why he was the way he was never explained. So right. I kind of developed Dario as his opposite, and just as a tragic plot device to give him some. It sucks because he's my favorite character right now, but literally he was made to die, just like all my characters are. They're literally introduced to die.
You are very aggressive towards your poor characters.
I know, and I love writing really likable characters just to kill them off for the shock value.
Dude.
But it ends up always biting me in the ass because then all of a sudden people are so attached to these characters, myself included, because Vox I could have lived if he died and it never came back.
Right.
But Dario could not stay dead in my heart. Like, even while I was writing Vox leading up to Ragnarok, I knew I was going to bring Dario back.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't, in my heart, keep him dead. And the more I thought about it, I was like, I could make so much more of an interesting character with this deer half-breed. And I'm so glad I did, because Dario is fucking adorable.
And Dario is one of the characters that is the most shrouded in mystery right now, which is why I'm looking forward to your return and participation in BotGD 2, because a big question about him has been posed since the original story that still hasn't been fully explored. Why is he alive? Why is he the same age that he's been? And
it's funny that you say that, because I forgot he hasn't aged until you just said it just now.
that was your start. That was your platform when this started.
But it also now just flooded back the entire reason why.
Oh God, you have a story and I want to know it now, but I can't. You can't give spoilers on a podcast.
No, it's starting to all kind of piece itself back together in my mind, and I know I have a doc somewhere that I kind of wrote down explanations and whatnot, so I really need to go and find out what's going on there. And I think it's especially more interesting considering who Dario ends up being partnered with, because there's a lot of similarities there. So, I mean, I'm excited to come back into the fold and finish kind of what I started and then develop further from there, because Dario is truly an interesting character.
For sure.
And I feel he didn't get his proper dues while I had him around, so it's time to fix that.
Absolutely. And I should probably add for the record, Vox is not just responsible for starting ships, he's responsible for the first ever iconic Battle of the Grounded Dungeon ship, and the second... And the first iconic relationship dynamic ship, god damn I could talk, for Battle of the Grounded Dungeon 2, Lost Pelt, and now Medario.
Was that the first one of BotGD 2?
Mildario? Oh, good. Okay. Liam and Verdandi might have been the first. The problem is that Mally has become such an unintended icon in the sequel. Like all of our characters, we made who we made just to have fun with them, but for some reason, Mally took off, and I gotta just applaud Tree's presentation and characterization of him, because that's the only thing I can figure, is that she's just got a really good handle on this character, and it makes a very strong presentation that gets noticed. And so to see this goat boy suddenly get a cute boyfriend, it just got everyone's attention real fast.
Yeah, two things with that. The first being, I'm so glad I don't have to write a straight relationship anymore, because damn, that was hard, because I didn't understand it. I couldn't, invest myself in it, because as much as I really enjoyed writing Lost Belt, and I did emotionally have ties to it, when you're not straight yourself, it's kind of weird to write that way, and I don't think it'll ever be 100% natural for anyone to try to write a relationship that doesn't align with your sexuality. So when I was finally afforded the chance to write a gay relationship, which is something I'm obviously very familiar with, it was like a breath of fresh air. And I'm glad you mentioned how well she's written, Malay, because when you see Dario reacting to how this goat operates and how this goat speaks and all the different dynamics that come with him, Dario, no pun intended, he's a deer in the headlights. He doesn't understand. I'm very proud of that one, by the way.
Well done. This is why you went to the dungeon first.
But when you see all of this confusion and a very human character in Dario, someone that, isn't, other than, Dario can use magic, Dario hasn't been involved with all of this, I don't even know what to describe this universe at this point, all this shit that has gone on. So Dario is almost ignorant to most of it. And ironically enough, because I don't understand 90% of what she's writing for her characters, I'm just writing Dario from my perspective.
And that's,
like, yeah, I hear you saying something, but I don't understand most of it, but I think you're cute, and that's just me talking.
Yes, and that's all. I mean, okay, I might be speaking for more than just myself. Sorry, I may be inaccurately speaking for more than just myself, but that's all I look for. Like, I've met people who have started out and just being like, well, I don't have anything thought through, and it's like, we don't care. We want you to play this character as them, as you, as your honest initial reaction to that block of text with nothing else to go on. That's what we're looking for, because that's where the greatest stuff happens.
That's the best part of a role play.
Yeah.
And format that it's in is the fact that if you do have somebody who's coming in completely blind and has no idea what's going on, their character should be coming into the story blind. They should not know, other than a basis of what the history is, which is pretty easy to tell people. We can put a synopsis out there and get them caught up decently with what has happened. And it's exactly the information they would know in character. They should not be coming in knowing every single facet of what has happened in the story, know every single character, and be able to talk to them. So when they're coming in and saying, well, I don't know what to do, my character just doesn't understand, good. They shouldn't understand. Run with it. That's perfect.
Because it's like, even if you wanted to find out all you can, dude, we've been doing this for a long time. Even we don't know every facet of what's going on. There was too much.
A year, and I'm so fucking confused right now, trying to understand what's going on in this. There's like a modern alternate universe going on. I saw something with a muffin was happening, and at this point I'm like, I'll catch up. And fortunately, I mean, you all have been so great in kind of sidelining my characters in a way that it's going to make sense when they come back, and I don't have to try too hard to understand.
No. Oh, and dude, I gotta tell you, okay, so for one thing, with the modern AU stuff, that is all extra writing fun. Literally, like, okay, let me roll back to an earlier comment so that this lead-in comment makes more sense. Going back to how you said it was interesting that you were gay, but you found yourself always writing a straight relationship, whereas I was straight and always found myself writing a gay one. So you can imagine why the alternate universe where Blackie happens just took off, because I was finally in my element.
Blackie was just the best. Oh my gosh, it's one of the best written ships in the whole story, in my opinion.
That means a lot, dude. And as usual, I have this curse where a character accidentally falls in love with another character off script, and it doesn't work out. I am 2 for 2. 2 for 2. But my consolation is that the golden timeline is so precious to me, I can't even describe it. And platonic Blackie is just as beautiful as romantic Blackie, because there's so much good with that. But it's not compatible with the universe where Blackie and Stone Dock is happening. So for one thing, I have a universe where my 2 favorite ships exist. So that's my consolation. That universe has been made canon by being mentioned, referenced, and connected to the Golden Timeline. Meaning all my favorite things, all the great elements of Golden Timeline, and then the ships of the other universe are canon. So, just had to throw that out there real quick. But I'm so glad that you like that ship. It is one of my all-time favorites. It is right there with Stone Dock. And the only reason I'm liking Blackie more right now is because Blackie has been able to be, there's more material to it. There's been a greater extent of exploring with it.
True.
So, from the romantic side standpoint, that is. But, so then going forward, modern AU, was really just Aki and I's excuse to do a different version of Blackie all over again, and now we're just fucking around with it. So don't worry a whole lot about modern AU. If you feel like things are going crazy there, it is all extra. We're having a blast writing. You can jump in blind or read up on it however you want. It's good. It's not making the the Golden Timeline universe accelerate anymore. And then for the Golden Timeline, I do gotta tell you the funniest thing. This is another moment where I'd see points in the original story where it wouldn't make sense that someone was missing, but they were. And usually when that happened, it was because the Mun was busy with school and we had to work around it for that day. But it still added an element of authenticity and the randomness of what life often does. So, had this great moment where I had my new villain character Renko get his obsessive gears turning in Molly's direction. And the first person he decides to target is Dario. Now, this is a guy who is so rigorously controlled in his mind. He likes to act a certain way. He likes to do things a certain way. He has who he is absolutely mapped out down to the smallest detail. And anything that causes an infringement on that causes him to get very frustrated and angry. And just the fact that he gets frustrated and angry upsets him even more because he doesn't do that. He doesn't get frustrated and angry. So when it actually happens, it just compounds the problem. So this is this guy with this great big master plan, and he sneaks off to go do something terrible, and Dario's just not there. Like, he's not there. There's no reason why he wouldn't be there. But for some reason, this guy is wandering around what he thinks is going to be his victim's house, just going, wait, what the fuck? And looking heads and tails and unable to find this guy and losing his mind for a day. Like, it breaks him. It totally breaks him. And I can't help but feel like you, as a Mun, unwittingly played the best possible prank on a really terrible muse, and I love that.
You're welcome. I mean, I totally put all that effort into it.
As unwitting as it was truly great. Oh, man. So, we are getting close to the hour mark, so I'm going to ask the last question first, and then it'll lead into the second to last question. But, so, you tried to get out of the RP, and yet you were also the one who decided to pull out the absolute beautiful line of "No, I'm not," which I just like. I want to get that tattooed on my back at this point. It's so great. The moment where Aki's like, "You're dead," and you're just like, "Nope, I'm still alive."
Yeah.
And that you were trying to get out of it, and yet you decided to type that. I love that. It's a beautiful thing.
That was shitpost me when I was saying that every other post was just like, this is too serious. It's time to lighten the mood a little bit. That's entirely what that was.
Oh my god, it was the emotional roller coaster because you were dead so fast right after that. Oh yeah. Man, no, it was good. But so you spent all that time trying to get out to finally end up in hell. You're out of purgatory, you're in hell, you've gotten past your own "no, I'm not"ing, and you're dead. And then, literally, everyone gets together to try to bring you back.
Like, why? Why did y'all do that? I was content with being dead. And the whole RP, I don't even think I really knew that anyone was coming to save me until, like, right before it happened. And they're like, "Oh, by the way, you should probably be here for this." And I'm like, okay. So yeah, that happened.
I think what it was is Vox was so important to King Haddock. He really, really was someone from his past who was in his corner the way Vox was. And also, gotta say, Haddock was also surrounded by a lot of angry teenagers of not royal blood, or not high education. And then there was Vox.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Then there was Vox, God bless him, who must have been a breath of fresh air because he was so proper.
True, true. I forget that, like, Vox has, like, high central ties.
Yeah.
Like, that always kind of slips my mind, because I do write him a lot more proper than I do Dario anyway, but definitely in terms of working with Haddock, given the age, because I wrote Vox to be very close to my age at the time, which obviously 6 years ago I was 21, and so there was an adult with another adult kind of babysitting all these children.
Right, and there was just a sense of these two were friends. Yeah. Like, whatever time they had spent together and growing, Vox had started out as his scout, another subjugate, but really truly became his friend. And to see him die in a way that Haddock blamed himself for, in such a traumatic way, I think resonated with the rebellion so much that there was an overt interest, enough for Pitch to try to use it to his advantage, to bring you back. And then I know for my character personally, the only thing he wanted to do was help Haddock and then keep Haddock alive. So when he heard that Haddock was essentially going to give up his own life to get Vox back, those two things ran right into each other, and he's like, well, what if we help out Haddock by getting his friend back, and also keep him alive by not letting him be the one to sacrifice himself?
Yeah, and then thank you for saving my ass.
and then we didn't talk.
Yeah, like it's almost baffling, just the disconnects that were had, even though some of these characters crossed paths in one of the most intimate ways possible.
Because the exchange happened at the end of season 1, and Vox and Stonegate didn't talk about it till the end of season 5.
Yeah, to be fair, I was there for like part of season 2, and then not at all in season 3, and then I just randomly appeared at the beginning of season 4.
Yeah, but they didn't talk for any of that. They didn't talk. Because one of Vox's bigger reappearances in season 4 was when Stonegate was kind of down for the count for some stuff, and really not talking to anybody. And so, I just think it's so hysterical that it just, because then they finally meet up and they're like, yeah, I don't even know what to say.
When was that? I don't.
There was a very short time at the end of season 5 where I think you and I were in hit chat and we were like, wow, shit, they never actually talked to each other after this. We should do something.
No, you're right. You mentioned hip chat, and I remember.
And then we just kind of walked into a room and they talked about it. I don't even remember hardly what they talked about. And I think so much of that is that Stonegate's focus was so heavy on saving and helping Haddock. There was almost nothing to do with Vox, with what he did, ironically
there was
enough.
No concern for him.
There was like there was none. He liked Vox and all, but never in a million years would he have done what he did if it hadn't had Haddock. Like if everything had gone to shit at the lake and Haddock wasn't around, Stonegate would have looked at the lake water and said, well, shit, I guess we'll have to come back and try again with something else.
Yeah.
He wouldn't have gone near it. And I think that like made him awkward when they finally talked about it, because he's like, this is the guy that I saved the life of technically, but it was so selfish. The like origins of why I did what I did, I don't even know how to appropriately discuss this. Oh, did I lose you? Vox! 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 Vox, you there?
Can you hear me?
Okay, there you are.
I'm here.
Okay. Don't worry, we have post-production editing, so what was the last thing you heard?
I don't remember.
Oh. Well... oh, yeah, I remember. So... Stonegate kind of felt awkward when they finally talked because it was more apparent when he finally saw Vox in front of him how selfish his intentions were when he actually saved Vox, and that to that degree there was nothing noble about it. But yet there he was in front of him anyway.
I agree. And I think for Vox there was definitely survivor's guilt with it, because you have someone like Vox who literally doesn't even know Stonegate at all.
Yeah.
And why would this guy sacrifice his life for him? Like, there was no reason for it in his mind.
Yeah.
Because even Vox didn't really even know about the relationship between Stonegate and Haddock. So he's like, I could never repay that. So I guess in a way it makes sense that they never spoke, because for one of them it was selfish, and for the other it's guilt and grief and not understanding why.
Yeah. And to that extent, I think their final conversation at the very end of everything was good because it brought a semblance of that. It kind of gave Stonegate his own reality check of solidifying, I did what I did, I have to accept that it was for that reason, and kind of helped Vox see it's like, okay, it's that this situation is not as confusing as I thought it was, because there's finally a clear element of why this happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to that extent, it kind of makes the timing of it perfect. Of how, at the very, very end, something from the very, very beginning got closure.
Absolutely, yeah. It needed to happen for sure, and I'm glad it did, because it kind of... It does close a chapter on something that I'm sure everybody thought about at some point. I mean, I thought about it a bunch once I finally came back in season 4. It's almost like, how do you tie it up without it feeling forced? And it definitely didn't feel forced at the end.
Yeah, and as usual, that's how it tends to go. The unplanned element really made it perfect somehow. That's why I love hiatuses, and that's why I love some people just not being able to be around to RP sometimes, because it never would have...
welcome, because I'm real good at that.
No, you have used up all of your privileges. You have used up all of your absent privileges. Someone else has to do it now. Just saying.
That's fair.
But that's why I love BotGD too. Because there isn't such a stressful time frame of us not knowing how permanent or temporary everything's going to be. Because I know one of my biggest fears was that BotGD would have all this great moments and then fizzle out and not really have any kind of close. And I know I would never forgive myself if something like that happened and I didn't at least say something, which is why the eventual proposition of 5th season has a big finale, we jump to EU, but we give the sentence a period, so to speak, just in case everything fizzles after that. But then everything didn't fizzle.
God.
Right, everything everything did not fizzle out after that at all. So now we don't have to worry. We literally don't have to worry about any of that ever at all. And so when people go missing to take care of some IRL stuff, sometimes it's a bummer and we're like, oh shoot, they're not here. This didn't get to happen. And other times, the weirdest stars just align and make it even more perfect because people took real-life breaks from the fictional RP.
I mean, we could not have picked a better way to end it when we did, and I'm so glad we chose to do it when we did.
Yeah.
Because I think there was so much potential to play it out to a point that it wasn't fun anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the biggest worry for everybody, was we're having a good time with it right now, but at what point does this become work? And at what point does this become an obligation that none of us want to meet? And so the fact that we were all able to not only say, let's call it, but also do it in such a way that it did feel natural. Like, it felt like it meant to close when it did.
Yeah.
It's like when you have a show that runs for 12 to 15 seasons and you're like, just shut the hell up already. We get it. It's the same thing over and over. And that's what it was going to be if we had kept pushing it, another 5 seasons or something. But I think we we said, you know what, it's time to sundown this project because we've done what we should do with it. Not all we could do with it, but what we should.
Yeah, and in a way, it's especially for either looking back on it as a memory, or for people who are just coming into the series. We can go to those first 5 seasons and go, here's the story. Is that it? No, but it can be if you want it to. And
absolutely, because it all just kind of resolves itself, and that's nice.
Right, and honestly, everything Gray did, especially with the EU, and everything Tree and Greg have been setting up with Battleground to Dungeon 2, has just felt so great and authentic, and right fitting along with everything that the story's doing. It doesn't feel like the shark is being jumped. It's just more good, fun content.
Absolutely.
But it can go and it can stop at any time. And that was a luxury that we didn't have with the first story, and it's a luxury that we only have because of the choices that we made for the first story. And I think that's great. Like you said, it had a very natural close to it that just, like, rewarding. It's a rewarding
us 5
ending.
years ago were very smart for the choice that we made.
No kidding. Man, for how much we screwed up with where we started, how we conducted ourselves, how we conducted our chat rooms, everything, we somehow got that really, really right.
We did. And it's so weird that, years went by before, the second iteration of this kind of kicked itself off. Because it was pretty much almost 5 years exactly between the first story and the second story. And if you would have told me in 2015, hey, in 5 years, this is going to happen again, I would not have believed it, because I would not have believed that I ever would have subjected myself to it again. But, here we are.
And I have got to give a shout out to Gray and Seasick in particular, who are basically like a beating heart for Battleground to Dungeon for the 2 to 3 years that there was, because we finished, oh man, I have my timetables all screwed up. 2014 through 2015 was when the first story closed, right?
How did we cram 5 seasons between September of 2014 and May of 2015? Like,
I have no idea.
Crazy to me. That's only, 7 or 8 months? One
of my biggest grievances, and it's personal and doesn't matter, but it's at the very end of the first Battle of Ragnarok in the MIDI trial, and there's a reference where it's like, they could hardly believe that their lives had changed so much in just this handful of months. And it grates against every sense of my body going, no, this story had to at least be 3 years old. Like, the amount of events that happen in this story scream 3 years. There was
I would have said then, there's no way all this bad shit could happen in such a short span of time, and then my last year has happened, and I'm like, you know what, I'm not so sure anymore.
It's true, and my wife was reading to me the Shadowhunter series, and there was one point where, like, the whole book takes the course over, like, a whole book is 2 weeks long, and, like, it has a major villain start and end arc and everything like that, and I'm sitting there like, what? How does that much happen in 2 weeks? But you're right, life can be crazy. But I always saw like half a year or so per season, give or take. But that's just me looking at everything that happened and going, how on earth was this only 7 months? But shit, where was I going with that? Right. Shout out to Gray and Seasick, because during all the downtime between BOTGD 1 and BOTGD 2, they were just threading and having a good time and world building and family building with all their characters. It was great. I didn't keep up with any of it, but it was constantly there. There was always something that was fresh BOTGD material that popped up, and it was so good to see. And honestly, it kind of felt like the thing that kept it all alive until we booted up for a sequel.
Absolutely. I do not think that the second iteration would have happened if there hadn't been some alternate or extended universe that happened in between the two, because it kept it, because we knew it was happening,
Right.
so it was always in the back of our mind in some way, shape, or form. So now we have a foundation, however it may be, to kind of build off of. And in the way that you shout them out, I have to shout everyone out.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you have, I don't even know how many of us there are anymore, a dozen, 2 dozen people, either actively or inactively contributing to this project.
Yeah.
But you all have just kept this thing alive that by no means, I can't think of any other internet-based roleplay of this variety that has had the lifespan that it's had. It's a rare gem that will never happen again.
For sure, I could never replicate it.
And it's kind of cool to be a part of that history.
And you were right there, keeping things going, dude. I mean, I know you are a lost scout many times, but your influence and the stuff that you do that's there, it sticks, big time.
I try.
and I like it because there's still creative stuff that's being done with this. It's not just us talking about the original story and being like, oh, it was so great. Nah, we're threading and still making new characters. We are still adding to a wiki. We are still refining a website. We have a freaking animated video. Art. There's endless. Do you know we have over 1,300 pieces of art for Battle of the Grounded Dungeon?
I was going through the Google Drive that apparently I made.
Yes. Well done, Vox. You did do that.
I still can't believe I made that. I'm still in shock. So I'm going through all the art. I'm not done. I'm still going through it.
Yep.
Like, it's insane to me that this much stuff has been built around this project. And I don't have words for it. It's just so cool.
So the final question is, what are relationship dynamics that you have with other muses that are good, the bad, the intriguing, etc.? But we are well over the hour mark for this one. So then this happens sometimes. So it happened to me and Tree at the same question.
That's not surprising at all.
Yep, at the same question where I knew I had easily another podcast just getting through that singular question. So Vox, we're going to have to call this one a close for this episode. But once I get a few more first-time visitors here in the cell, I'm going to be going back. For anyone who wants to do a second podcast, we'll call them up and we'll talk about more character dynamics and other historical moments in Battle of the Grounded Dungeon to get people's take on it, if you would be interested in doing that.
Please, I could talk about this subject for days. So
yeah.
It only makes sense.
Which is why I impose a time limit, because I am there too. So yes. In the time being, Vox, again, thank you for joining me here on the Grounded Dungeon. I hope you have a wonderful time, because I don't ever know how to end one of these things, and so I don't bother making any kind of outro.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. It's been really fun, and I'm so glad to be back, because there's so much more work to do.
I will drink to that. Alright, Vox, thank you so much. No ending, guys. Don't wait for one. Bye.